this is Facebook Live. It's the infant feeding team at the John Radcliffe. I'm on level 5 and I'm Alex Mulford. I'm one of the team, and I'm expecting Elisa at the moment to come and join me any moment, so she may appear any minute. It would be lovely to have the company, but I'm just looking to see if anybody's joining me as yet. It looks like I'm on my own. I shall keep an eye open. Oh, we've got 2. That's lovely to see 2 people coming up there. So as I said, I'm Alex. I'm from the infant feeding team. I'm not meant to be on my own. Elisa is helping someone at the moment and hopefully will join me shortly. And I've noticed the door's flown open, so hopefully she'll shut it when she comes in. You can see the numbers going up. So I know you've had a mix of the team. I'm one of the 5 in the infant feeding team. We've got Hannah Torrance, me, Alex, Elisa, who will be joining me any minute now, Naomi Morton and Sarah Markley Brown. So you're slowly but surely meeting us all on these sessions. I've got my laptop open next to me, so do start sending me some questions through. I can see people coming up on the screen. It's showing me your faces at the moment, or at least your icons. And I thought I'd start by talking about stomach sizes before I get any questions coming in. So let me just see if I can see any of you see it coming up on the screen. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Fabulous. Hopefully I shall see your questions as you ask them. Lovely. Okay. Let me know that you can hear me or see me. Give me a thumbs up or something. That would be really handy. I'll keep an eye open. I'm assuming that someone of the 19 that are on screen can actually hear me. So a thumbs up would be great. Fabulous. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you. I can see that coming up. So I thought, there's lots of you doing it. That's wonderful. I thought we'd have a quick chat about stomach sizes, because that's one of the things that comes up over and over and over again, is how much does a baby need in those early days? Well, when a baby is first born, we talk about a stomach being the size of a cherry. I mean, we're talking really, really tiny. And we use a poster to talk to parents about it. So we have a poster and we talk about the fact that when a baby's first born, the stomach is only the size of a cherry. And then by day 3, it goes to the size of an egg. No, a walnut, sorry, I got it wrong. I'm getting ahead of myself, of a walnut. And then it moves up to being the size of an apricot, and eventually it becomes the size of an egg. And this is quite a rapid change. That cherry stage is only the first of 24 or so hours. And we also use marbles to show people what it looks like, so you have a really good idea of how small your baby's tummy will be when they're first born. So this is a marble that we use to talk about the stomach when a baby's first born. So as you can see, it's really tiny. And within a matter of days, we've gone up to this size, and then we go up to this size. You can see the difference. They're absolutely a big difference. The reason for telling you that is that because I think parents are always worried that they're not giving their babies enough milk in the first few days, and usually they are. Colostrum is, as we've said on these sessions before, colostrum is in tiny weeny amounts, and it's meant to be because a baby's tummy is tiny, and the food that a baby gets, that colostrum, is a food in concentrate, and it provides babies with a fantastic protective layer in their stomach, but also lots of antibodies, special antibodies that mums have made specifically for their baby, and it gives them the protection that they need in those first days of life. Because food isn't the thing they need first off, they need that protection much more than anything else. Because babies, when they're born at term, have laid down nice fatty deposits on their shoulders, down their backs of their arms, and you'll see these lovely babies when they're term have got these lovely fatty deposits that are like their reserves for those early days when mummy and baby are learning how to breastfeed. Because as we've said many a time on these sessions, breastfeeding is a learned skill, and it takes time to learn for both mum and baby. So this stomach size being absolutely tiny is completely normal. So when we help you, if your baby's not going to the breast, when we help you with your feeding, we might help you to get milk into, or colostrum into, a syringe. And this is 1 ml. You think how big 1 ml is, absolutely tiny. But really, if you got 0.2 or 0.3 on there, we'll be really pleased and really delighted in those early days. Only babies that have got special factors, so maybe a baby that has been born a bit early, or was quite light when it was born, might need a bit more. But the majority of babies when they're born at term and a good weight we're talking about small amounts of colostrum in the first 24 hours is all they need, because their tummy is absolutely minuscule. But that changes, and in line with that, the baby's stomach grows and the mother's ability to produce milk increases and increases and increases. Each day she can produce a bit more, but that only happens if she's removing milk. So she needs to be expressing to get that milk moving if the baby's not attaching. So a baby who is attaching will drive the supply, but if for any reason the baby's not attaching, we do back it up with pumping. So that might be initially by hand, because colostrum is thick and sticky, and when you collect it in a syringe like this, we literally collect it drop by drop by drop, literally. The mum will hand express, collect a drop and collect the drop. We can hear the corridor, sorry I've left the door open. So in and hold, and then she collects that drop, and it comes very, very slowly. The little drops collect on the end of the nipple, and then the baby, you're able to give the milk to the baby, the colostrum to the baby. But what a mum will find is over the first 24 hours, 48 hours or so, she'll see the amount she's getting going up, and that goes in line with the stomach of the baby. So we always expect increasing amounts of colostrum to be for the mum to express. And then the mature milk comes in somewhere between days 3 and 5. So that's linked to the hormones that are in the placenta. So once the placenta is delivered, the progesterone that's in the placenta goes out of the body, and it allows prolactin, which is the hormone that produces milk, to start working. Because up until then, colostrum is there, but it's not driving your milk production. And it's only when the placenta is delivered that full milk production can start, which is why we know that there's usually a 3 to 5 week delay before milk really starts to come in. And once it starts to come in, we expect it to go again up rapidly in big volumes, so that by the end of a few weeks a mother will be producing on average 750 mils. So we've gone from 0.2 tiny weeny amounts in this syringe, 0.2 or 0.3, and if she's really lucky 0.5 or a mil, and eventually to the point where she's producing 750 mils in a 24-hour period, and that's on average. So some mums will produce more and some mums will produce less. I'm just looking to see if anyone sent me any questions. I can't see any as yet, so if you've got any questions, do send them through. Hello to Naomi, you're meant to be on holiday, so I can see she's watching. But, so that was to think about the stomach sizes and that increasing need to increase the volume of milk. So when a baby's born, we have to actually drive that supply. Oh, I can see a question from Claire. We know Claire. She's been in contact with us before. Claire, she's got a question about positioning. Now that my baby boy is 9 weeks old and is 6 kg, well done you. I've been feeding him in a more upright position, cradled on my lap. Should his ear still be in line with his shoulder or his hip? Or is this okay if he turns his head to the side to feed? Thank you for your help. We do find as babies get older, we use what we call a grown-up position. So you do tend to find that the baby isn't necessarily head and body in line in the same way as we expect them to be in the first instance when they're first born. So if I grab a doll, we can talk about initially when you're feeding a newborn baby, we do exactly what Claire has just talked about, wanting head and body in line. As they get older, sometimes we might end up with them slightly with their head slightly tipped towards the mum, but it's not too much. We don't want them feeding over their shoulder. So if you think about it, you try and take a drink and now swallow that drink, you can't, or down there, you can't swallow if your head and neck aren't in line. A slight change with a slightly older baby, they seem to cope with. So often you'll have an older baby that'll be sitting on the lap and will be slightly turned towards the mum, but you do want the head and shoulders to be in line and maybe the torso twisted slightly. So Claire, if it's working, keep going. And that's really good to hear about that weight. Well done you. That's fantastic. That's lovely weight gain. Absolutely fantastic. So well done. So we were talking about the volume's increasing, so obviously Claire has established a milk supply and her baby's gaining nicely, 9 weeks old and 6 kilos is a lovely weight. So what we're looking at is that once you get to about 4 weeks, we're not expecting that supply to carry on. So when I mentioned 750 mils as on average a mother's producing, that now doesn't change. That carries on as it is from 4 weeks or so until the baby is onto other foods. What happens is the milk that the mother produces continues to constantly change and meet the baby's needs. So rather than, for instance, if you think about formula, it's a finite amount of nutrients and a finite amount of liquid. You have to give more and more and more to give more calories. The breast milk's always modifying to meet the baby's needs. Now I can see I've got a question from Emma. I'm sure it's not a silly question at all. Do you need to clean the syringe first with soap and water before harvesting in the syringe? Only if you've used it before. So we would give you clean ones here, and then you can wash them. So they actually come pre-packed and they're clean and ready to go. If you've used it already, give it a good wash with hot soapy water. So this one's got a bung. Not all of ours have bungs, but that isn't really very important because colostrum is so thick and gloopy it doesn't tend to come out. So if I took the bung off, you can take the syringe apart and you'll be able to clean it. I put it in a bowl of hot soapy water. Make sure you push it through, get the hot soapy water through, rinse it with hot water again, so give it a good rinse, and then give it a really good shake to dry as best you can. Quite difficult to dry these. If you're doing that with a pump kit, you'd want to be drying it with a clean tea towel or some paper towel, some clean paper towel. So the pump kits, I bought some earlier. So a pump kit, for instance, this is an Amida pump kit. We use 2 different pumps in the hospital. We use Amida and Medela. This is an Amida pump kit. These are the bits that you'd be wanting to wash thoroughly. So they're the bits that go together. This bit forms helps form the vacuum. That bit helps form the vacuum. The bottle screws on at the bottom, and obviously that wants to be clean. And then it has a cap that goes on the top. So the cap and the tubing that attach to the pump don't necessarily need cleaning, but these do. So you would want to be washing this bit and the bottle thoroughly, hot soapy water, rinse it in hot water, and then dry it with a clean paper towel or a clean tea towel. So that's what we'll be doing with this. And just to say that here in the John Radcliffe, we don't actually sterilise our equipment for our babies that are term. So on the newborn unit, yes, we do sterilise equipment, pumping equipment, because those babies are slightly more vulnerable. But our babies that are born at term, we just wash in hot soapy water, rinse in hot water, and that dry off. So we're not sterilising. So our mums that are having to do a lot of pumping, so there are many of you out there who've come across us in the past and you've ended up doing lots and lots of pumping to meet your baby's needs. Will know how onerous it is, how much work it is, because of all the washing and everything. Well, the one thing you can take out of it is the sterilising. So no need to sterilise, just get these things really, really clean. Get the fat off, because our wonderful breast milk has got quite a lot of fat in it. That's why it needs to be hot, soapy water to clean it. Let me have a quick look, because I can see some more questions coming through. See what else we've got. So that was my answer to Emma, so not a silly question at all. Oh, you've ordered some from Amazon, well done you. Harriet, hello, if I'm planning to breastfeed, would you still recommend harvesting milk? And when do you do this? Sorry if you mentioned it before. I didn't, so it's a very good question. It's only up to you. So we tend to suggest harvesting for women who have particular needs. So a mother who has diabetes would be really well recommended to be expressing in the antenatal period, because their baby's at high risk of needing to have additional milk when the baby's born. Because babies that are born to mothers with diabetes will have to have their blood sugars checked when they're born, because their blood sugars can go a little bit awry because of the situation they've been in. So because of that, we often like to have mums ready with a bit of express to give, because we know that the best health outcomes for a baby, particularly a baby with mother with diabetes, is to maintain human milk exclusivity. And nothing brings up blood sugars like colostrum. So a mother who has got diabetes, we'd be strongly recommend she expresses in the antenatal period, 37 weeks onwards, maybe 4 times a day. Your midwife would be able to teach you how to do that. If you haven't got any particular a particular reason, so you're not thinking you might be having your baby early, or you're not worried that your baby's going to be a bit lighter in weight than we would hope, then actually there's no particular reason to do it. Some of the other reasons that mothers do it is if they've had breast surgery to really get the milk, to really get going and learning how to do it. But Harriet, it's totally up to you whether you do it or not. So it's a good skill to learn in advance, maybe just have a go, but if you've got no particular reason to collect it in advance, you don't feel that you need to, okay? I'm sorry about the noise from the corridor, I did leave the door open. I'll just give it a push and see if it'll stay shut. As I said at the beginning, I was expecting Eliza, but she's obviously caught up. She's helping somebody downstairs at the moment, so she's not been able to escape as yet. So I'd left the door open for her, but never mind. She'll hopefully come in a minute. So Harriet, there's no particular requirement. She said thanks. There's no particular requirement on you to do it. Only do it if you want to. You might just want to have a go so you know what you're doing. Some mums find it useful just to have a little bit before they come in, so that when you've had your baby, and it's very tiring, you know, obviously it is labour, it's hard work, you may be very tired afterwards. Just knowing that skill before you come in can be beneficial, even if you haven't collected very much. So Amy's come in with a question now. Her baby's 11 days old and she's expressing milk and formula feed, but I only managed to express 6 ounces a day. How often should I be expressing milk? Well, we would actually recommend that you always mimic what a baby does. So we anticipate a baby will feed 8 to 13 times in a 24-hour period. So when we're talking about pumping, we talk about expressing 8 times minimum in a 24-hour period. If you're going on and feeding well, that counts as 1. But if you're trying to push your supply, we'd be looking at 8. So if you can express 6 ounces, I obviously, without knowing how many times you've done that, I can't really sort of comment on the volume that you've got there. 11 days, you've still got time to really push your milk supply though, Amy, because we know that you've got a 2-week window to really, really maximise your milk supply. So you've still got time to push those prolactin receptors. So we think that in the breast, that there are these receptors in the breast that need to be turned on, and they're only turned on by removing milk. So either by the baby feeding or the mother expressing. And we know that for the majority of women, they've got about 2 weeks to really, really push that milk supply. So effective milk removal in these first 2 weeks is totally utterly crucial, sorry I'm getting tongue-tied there, utterly crucial to establish a really, really good milk supply in the long run. So what you do in the first 2 weeks impacts on the whole of the lactation, all the way to when you finish feeding your baby. Whether it is 6 months, a year or 2 years, then it's going that what you do now has that impact. It's really, really difficult to influence your milk supply after the first 2 weeks. It's a real challenge to increase it after the first 2 weeks. We always hope, and we know there are mothers out there who do manage it and do manage to increase their supply after that period of time, but it's much easier in this early days. So Amy, perhaps give us a call, have a chat with us about it. Perhaps I can have a bit more information, because obviously everyone's slightly different, and we can see how, you know, when this is happening, what's happening with your feeding, and see if we can help you increase your supply. But generally, if we're helping mums to express, it would be 8 times in 24 hours. Frequent, not regular, so we don't worry about 3 hourly. That's not how babies normally feed if you leave them to it. So you can do some close together and some further apart. And we would be pumping while you see milk. So pump kits on, don't look at the clock. Is milk coming? Pump. Is it slowing? Have a quick break, put the pump kits back on again. You get a bit more. Is it slowing again? Pump kits off, put them back on again. Now, differing times of the day, you'll get different amounts. You'll spend different amounts of time pumping. But the idea is that you keep removing milk, because the more you remove, the more you get. So I can see more questions coming through. So Rita's put a question through. She's saying it's not a silly question. I'm sure it isn't. She doesn't know much yet about breastfeeding. I'm 26 weeks pregnant, planning to breastfeed. When and why do you need to express milk? You don't necessarily. We talk a lot about expressing because we deal with a lot of women who have struggled with their milk supply. If everything goes well, you need never express, and your baby need never have expressed breast milk. So we use expressing as the backup when feeding isn't going brilliantly. So if, for instance, a baby's not attaching because they're sleepy, babies that are jaundiced, and many babies are, don't attach very well because they're quite sleepy, we back it up with expressing. If we've got a baby, as I mentioned earlier, that the baby of a diabetic mother, we know that we are likely to have to give them a bit more milk in the first few days. Expressing is really useful for them. If a mother's struggling to build her milk supply, we would express. So there's always a reason to do it. It isn't done just because. So there are many, many women out there who have never expressed, and their babies have never had any expressed breast milk, and they've done brilliantly and they've fed their babies. So Rita, no need to do it, only if there's a particular reason. So I hope that reassures you. Elizabeth's come through too. If you're exclusively breastfeeding but want partner to take over one of the night feeds, how early is it recommended to start expressing to enable partners to help with the odd feed? We'd normally recommend you get breastfeeding established. Make sure both you and your baby know what you're doing. We find that in the morning most moms have the most milk, so that's a really, really good time if you want to do the odd feed to express in the morning. So feed your baby, then express after you've fed. It's mad, I know, because you've been feeding all night and yet we still have more milk in the morning, but we do. So feed the baby, express afterwards, and then that can be the milk for later when you want your partner to give a feed. And that's what works for many women. And some women find it useful to do that maybe in the evenings when babies can do that cluster feeding, and it might give you 2 minutes off, 5 minutes off, half an hour off, because it's quite common for cluster feeding in the evening. Anyone out there who's got a baby that's cluster feeding at night, a couple of hours where they feed left, right, left, right, left, right, that is normal, but it can help with that too. And I know partners want to be involved. But be aware when you're giving a bottle, don't do it too soon. I know you've asked about when. Let your baby learn how to breastfeed. Be happy that you both know what you're doing before you start introducing a bottle, because it can be a little bit confusing initially. So give them a chance to learn how to breastfeed a few weeks and then maybe think about it after that. Make sure you've got good milk supply and then go for it with that. Also think about giving the bottle. We talk about responsive bottle feeding here. So in the media and in sort of the press, we tend to see babies pretty much flat on their back. In this position, and we see bottles upright. But actually, really and truly for that baby, they want to be upright and the bottles want to be horizontal. It's much nicer for the baby. If you tip a bottle up, it comes out at a regular drop, drop, drop. And the baby isn't used to that. They're used to controlling your flow at the breast. So if you bring the bottle down, the milk will just sit there and the baby can remove it at their own pace. And it's known as responsive or paced bottle feeding. And it's much nicer for the baby. And we tend to bring our babies in nice and close, give them a cuddle, really nice and close. Get them to open their mouths by brushing down, encouraging them to open their mouths. What happens is you do this, a bit like when they come to the breast and you do this, you brush and they'll go, and they'll open their mouth, and then you introduce the bottle and you keep it as horizontal as you can, but with what the teat that's in the mouth needs to be full. Obviously, as you get less and less in the bottle, you are going to have to go up. But initially, if there's a lot of milk in that bottle and you tip it up, it's going to go pour, pour, pour into that poor baby's mouth, and they won't be able to control the flow in the way that they can. That was Elisa telling me she's on her way. In a way that they control the breast, they can control the bottle if the bottle is horizontal, and it gives them the chance to stop and start and stop and start, which is what babies do at the breast. So it's normal for them to sort of have a pause. I'm sure those that have already got your babies, I'm sure you've seen it. They do feed, 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 pause. Then they go again, feed, 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 pause. And as the feed progresses, those pauses get longer. So we talk about it sort of like they go on, they go chomp, 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 chomp to get them let down, then they do big, deep sucks with pauses. I've been knocked at the door. Who is it? Oh, hiya!
Hello, everyone. Sorry.
So what we're talking about is, so that they go into this big deep sucks of pauses once the milk starts to come, the milk's let down, and then as the feed progresses, they tend to get a little bit more sleepy, and they'll do little flutters and big long pauses, and little flutters and big long pauses. So it's a bit like quick, 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 quicks to get the milk going, big deep sucks with pauses is the main course, and then the little flutters with pauses. Little flutters with very big pauses is a chocolate pudding with a teaspoon, and that's when they get in the really high fat milk, and so they're doing little flutters, so don't take them off because that's really important. They get in the high fat milk at that point in time. So I'm working my way through the questions, Elisa.
Okay, yeah.
So we've had a few. I've talked about stomach sizes, that's how we started. I said you were downstairs helping a mummy. So right, so that was Rita, and so Rita said thank you for hers. Amy's come in and said, my milk supply wasn't good, so day 4 it started coming through, so I've decided to combi feed express milk and formula. Is this okay for my baby? Sorry, I know I've asked questions already. He's 4 to 5 ounces a time. He's 11 days old. Amy, you can ask as many questions as you want. There's absolutely no limit whatsoever. That's fine. You've got to do what's right for you and your family. We maximise breast milk because we know breast milk is really good for the baby. So we would be encouraging you to if you're expressing, that's fantastic. And if you wanted to phase out formula milk, then we would be encouraging you to maybe up the expressing so that you can actually phase out the formula milk, or maybe put your baby to the breast more frequently. But have a think, Amy, what you want to do, because that's something that we would want to talk to you about individually rather than in this forum. But your feeding choice is your feeding choice, and we're here to support you with whatever you do. So, and we'll help you whichever way you want to go. Elizabeth's come back and said thank you. So Elizabeth was asking about night feeds and starting to express. So right, so we haven't got any more questions at the moment. They've been coming through steadily, but I don't know if you've got anything you wanted to bring up today.
I had a couple of things. So it depends. Have we talked about premature babies at all?
But just mention them briefly, because I was asked if people needed to express, and I said only specific reasons. So.
Because I was thinking we often talk just about the normal, what to do, how you start, and we're all assuming that it's a nice and healthy term baby, but often sometimes it's not the case. So you might have a baby who's born prematurely or a bit smaller for the gestational age, or they might be a bit unwell, so there might be some cues that are missing. They might be a bit more sleepy, so one might think, oh, my baby's breastfed and it's nice and asleep and seems content and sleeps a lot. It might be very full and happy, but actually they're just very sleepy. So often we do encourage mothers with babies who are born prematurely or a bit smaller to just encourage their babies to feed more, to be a bit more proactive and feed them more frequently, and potentially, as we said, express on top of the breastfeeds. But often they are, even if it looks like they're attaching well and looks like they're feeding well, they might not be as efficient as they could be. So that might also have an impact on the long-term milk supply. So this might bring a bit more work for the mother at the start. So gear up to little snacks to get through, and get as much skin to, if you are with your baby, get as much skin to skin with your baby as possible. Encourage your babies to feed frequently, at the very least 8 times a day, often 8 to 12 times a day, and express on top of breastfeeding.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and I think that's very much what we find, is that these babies that are premature or late premature, up to 36 weeks, then actually they do look like they're doing a really, really good job, and you can see them, they're doing all what I've just been talking about, that suck, swallow, swallow, but actually they're not doing as good a job as we'd like, and we do back that up with pumping, and that really is securing the mother's milk supply too, because it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. If the baby isn't removing milk well, I've mentioned that 2-week window to maximise your milk supply, if they're not removing milk, then they're not actually driving the milk supply, and then the mother's playing a huge catch-up. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really difficult to influence the milk supply after the first few weeks. Really, really difficult. Abby's come with a question. Her baby's 6 days old and has started becoming more impatient when trying to latch. He then becomes frustrated and won't latch as he's crying and gets too worked up. Any tips, please? Thank you. Do you want to do that one?
Yeah, I can also... Abby, are you exclusively breastfeeding your baby, or have you been offering anything else on top of the breastfeeds? Have you been expressing any milk? Have you been given any formula, or any teats or bottles? So sometimes this can make a difference. I would say, this would be interesting. Sometimes, of course, if they have had something else, they might get a bit of flow confusion. So if any bottles have been given, the flow is much faster with the bottle, and they might just attach and expect milk to go through. Sometimes if the attachment is not deep enough, or we haven't quite gotten the best latch that it could be, then they are not getting as much milk as they would like, and they could get a bit frustrated.
She's saying that she's exclusively feeding.
Okay, so I would say get in touch with someone, and so that you can observe the attachment, and sometimes there are a few adjustments that can be made, either in how you're holding your baby or how your baby's going onto the breast.
It can be something as simple as babies don't like to be held on their heads. So, you know, babies actually really don't like you holding the back of their head, and it can be sometimes something as simple as that, and just all you need to do is bring your hand lower. Now, of course, that might not be the situation in this case, Abby, but that can be one of the things it can be. Babies, when we're pushing the baby on the breast, we want to be pushing the back here, just pushing them there, and that they come on. But they become really astute, don't they? They know what their mouthful they want, and if they don't get the mouthful they're looking for, they get grumpy and they go, "This isn't working for me." So they say, "No, try again," and that's quite possibly what's happening here. And it may be a tiny weeny change. You're probably doing an amazing job, and you're 99.9% there. We just perhaps want to have a look and see what you're doing. And we could do that on an Attend Anywhere call. It doesn't necessarily involve coming in, because we can do breastfeeding support with positioning attachment quite well on Attend Anywhere. So perhaps give us a call, because we're about after this, you know, we can see if we can give you a hand and just see what's happening, because the sooner you get it sorted, the better, really.
And the other thing I would say, as we talk about very often, is your baby reaching the milestone? So are the poos yellow and quite seedy with little bits in? Are they at least 2 a day? Is your baby, you know, you said 6 days old, so is your baby doing at least 6 heavy, you know, 5 to 6 heavy wet nappies a day, quite clear, no little orange or pinky stripes or a bit brick dust, none of that. You know, is all that happening? Otherwise we might look again both at attachment and milk supply potentially.
But it's really early days. At 6 days, we've got lots of room to turn this round for you. So, you know, your baby's only been here for 6 days, so we can definitely make this better. Get in touch. I think that would be really worthwhile doing an Attend Anywhere, or even tonight or tomorrow. So we can definitely help you with that. Felicity's come through and looks like she's had a really tough time. She's had 2 operations and 2 hemorrhages, 3 blood transfusions since her baby was born. Her milk supply is almost stopped. How can I improve it? He's 5 weeks old. If you'd established a milk supply in the first instance, you should be able to get it back, because I mentioned at the beginning, I talked about the breast having lots of prolactin receptors, and if the receptors are turned on, even if you've had a dip in your supply now, you should be able to get it back. But it will involve a lot of milk removal, either by putting your baby to the breast lots and lots and lots, or pumping, or a combination of both. But you should be able to get it back. But I'm not surprised you've struggled with all of that going on. That's been really tough. So anything else you can add to that? So I mean,
yeah, and again, probably get in touch.
Yeah.
We can just work on a plan, you know, more individualized for you, and you know what's going on in your situation and your preferences, and we might find ways that work for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be well worth. So we'd like to hear from Abby and Felicity, please. Give us a call and see what's happening. So that would be great. So that's it on the questions at the moment. But did you have anything else on your list?
We were talking. I mean, we did mention babies who are born a bit early. Sometimes another situation where a baby might be a bit more sleepy and a bit less efficient at feeding is if they're jaundiced. So now if they're born a bit premature, often, well, they're more at risk of getting jaundice, so keep an eye. But sometimes babies are born and they seem to be feeding really well, and then suddenly they start getting a bit sleepy, not feeding as much, and sometimes it is when they're jaundiced and suddenly they might not attach at the breast because they fall asleep even before getting there. So that's again another time where we might need to be a bit more proactive and sort of pumping a bit on top and offering some extra milk if they are particularly sleepy and not quite efficient at feeding. Again, this might have an impact on milk supply later on. So
So I think it's being aware, as Elisa mentioned earlier, what the output is. So, you know, we talk about in this team, we talk about 4 reliable signs of milk intake. So the first one is the one where our late prems can make it more difficult for us to be sure, because the first one is that suck swallow rhythm that we can see that they're doing their nice deep sucks and swallows, and we're looking for really 1 suck or 2 sucks to a swallow, not 4 or 5 or 6. That's too many. We really want to see a baby going on and going chomp chomp swallow, chomp chomp swallow, and if it's going longer periods than that, you know, do literally like this, swallow, then actually we're thinking, oh, okay, maybe that baby's not transferring milk well, or the mother's not got as much milk. So that's our first reliable sign. The 2 and the 3 are the poos and the wees. So as Lisa's already mentioned, we're looking for yellow stools, but that's from day 4 onwards. We want 2 yellow stools day 4 onwards, and 6 heavy wet nappies, and this is on page 17 of Off to the Best Start, which you can find. If you already had your baby, you should have been given a copy, and if you haven't, you'll find it on the UNICEF Baby Friendly Initiative website. You'll be able to find it. If you Google Off to the Best Start, it'll come up. And this page is absolutely fantastic. It is such a useful page. I always tell parents the most important page in the whole book, because it tells you what your baby is doing with regard to food. So baby's poo always starts black, then it goes green, greeny brown, we call it changing, and by day 4 it should be yellow. And we're expecting 2 £2 coin sized poos a day from day 4 onwards, and we're expecting them to be doing increasing volumes of wee every single day till they get to day 6, when we want to see 6 heavy wet nappies. And the final of the 4, because that was our 2 and our 3, is the weight. And we want babies that are gaining a minimum, girls, 20 grams a day from day 5 onwards, and boys nearer 30 grams per day, day 5 onwards. So we do not expect weight gain after day 5. We do anticipate most babies will lose some weight by day 5, but after that it should always be an upward trajectory. And if it isn't, we need to be doing something about it. So I need to add to what I've said there. What's the number to call? She's saying. This is Felicity. So our number does come up at the end, but just in case you're ready with a pen, it's Oxford 01865 572 950. So that's 572 950. If you go onto the OUH website and you go onto maternity, you'll find us underneath the in the maternity. We have our own web page. So you'll find all our contact information there too, including our email address, which some people prefer. So we're very contactable. We're in 7 days a week. We pretty much cover 8 till about 5 or 6 in the day. So there is somebody here. If we don't answer the phone, it's because we're on the wards. So as I said, Elisa was downstairs in level 1 seeing a mum, and I'm about to go to Tom's ward as soon as we've finished, because we've got a baby over there that needs seeing. So if we don't answer, just leave us a message and we'll get back to you either later that day or the next day. Kristen's come through. I've only just been able to join. Welcome. My daughter's 7 weeks old and I'm breastfeeding at about 2 weeks old. I got mastitis and it was treated with antibiotics. Now the infection's been treated. I have a hard lump, slightly tender. It feels hard under my skin at all times, though sometimes it's bigger and then it drains a bit when I feed. My GP said not to worry about it, but I am worried. Should I get a referral? Does it go entirely in between feeds? Because there is something called a lactocele, which is an enlarged area that when you before you feed, it feels hard because it's full of milk, and then when you do feed, it drains and it softens totally. But if it remains hard, then it might be worth thinking about getting a referral. So they have the breastfeeding clinic, not the breastfeeding, the breast clinic, which is at the Churchill, would be the place to be referred to. So if you are concerned because it doesn't go away entirely, then yes, maybe see if you get a referral through your GP. So they would do a scan there then. Felicity's come back and said thank you. So yeah, just think, Kristen, whether it drains entirely, because if it drains entirely, then it's likely to be a lactocele, in which we would not be worried about. But if it never drains, never goes completely, then yes, I think perhaps go back and have a chat with your GP again and ask for a referral to the team. Right, we haven't got any more questions. Did you want to bring anything else up? We talked about jaundice and prem babies, didn't we? So
I mean, we could talk, even though it might be relevant to some of you. I was thinking about a bit of medications and breastfeeding. We've had a few queries the last few days. Someone who needed a dental appointment and has been told that she needed to express or give something else to her baby. Or sometimes we come across, not all health professionals are unfortunately up to date with.
No, absolutely.
So if you are taking medications, or there is any plan for you to start any medications and you're not sure, you can either contact us, or there are good places to look. There is a LactMed database online. It's free of access for anyone, so there you could find quite good appropriate information about the specific medication that you're going to take and what degrees it passes to breast milk, if there are any concerns for you or your baby, if you're breastfeeding. And there is a really good book, 2 books. One is Hales, Medications and Mother's Milk.
And we've got the old one here.
And then Wendy Johns has also written another marvelous book about medication and breastfeeding.
It's quite a tome. This is an old one. This is out of date now, but we actually have online access to this now. Yeah. So if you do have a medication that you're concerned about, then as Lisa said, we can look it up too. Yeah. And the Breastfeeding Network, which is where Wendy Jones is. So actually the Breastfeeding Network have a fabulous drugs in breast milk section and their resources page, and for instance it talks about analgesia, antihistamines, it talks about really anything you can think of, even head lice products and things like that. So it's well worth having a look at if you're thinking, oh, can I, can't I, because unfortunately a lot of people will just say you can't, and that's not always the case. One of the ones we come across here are antidepressives, so things like sertraline and citalopram, and they're absolutely fine. You can take those and breastfeed. There is no reason to stop them. In fact, we actively encourage you to carry on with them, but we have heard of people being told to stop, and you don't need to. So the majority of medications that are out there are compatible with breastfeeding, but if you've got any concerns, just contact us. And if someone gives you an answer and you don't think they've done their research, then by all means contact the Breastfeeding Network, contact us. As Elisa said,
Wendy Johns has also her own website.
Yeah.
And there's an email there.
Yeah, she'll answer, and she answers really quickly.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, she's a fantastic resource for people. So that was medications. That was a good one. So anything else you were thinking of on your list today? I talked about stomach size. I went on and on about stomach size and pumping, and had my syringe out to talk about volumes and
so there are quite a lot of things.
Yeah, we cover a lot, but because there wasn't anything else on the questions. Any more questions? I did wonder actually if we talked about the traffic light system, because we've talked about donated numerous times, but this is the traffic light that we use. I know it's obvious it's a traffic light, but actually what it is it's up for staff, and it's there as much for the parents as well, that we actually have a traffic light system that means that if you're in and we're on green, which we are at the moment, and you want your baby to have donated breast milk, there will be no impediment to that. You will be given donated breast milk, because we're quite well off for it at the moment. On occasions, obviously, the neonatal unit gets priority, and that's for obvious reasons. If the stocks start to run down, we don't have quite so many donors, then we go into amber. And when we're on amber, then certain criteria. So our mothers with babies, mothers who have diabetes, they get priority. For instance, or our premature babies will get priority. So mothers who have atopic illnesses, severe asthma, hay fever, allergic reactions, they will get priority on that. And then if we're on red, then unfortunately it's not available at all on the ward. So that's how it works. But it makes it very fair, and it means that we don't deny anybody donated breast milk when it's available. And we're totally reliant on our wonderful mums who give it to us. Rita's come back with one more question. How do you store the milk you express? You can freeze it. So if this is something you're doing before you've had your baby, you can pop it in the freezer. If it's once the baby's born, it can be kept at room temperature. Mature milk can be kept at room temperature for 6 hours. Then it can go in the fridge for 5 days. Then it can go in the freezer for 6 months. If it's colostrum, actually it's fine at room temperature for 24 hours. And then again, 5 days in the fridge, 6 months in the freezer. But really the best place for your milk is always in your baby. So definitely. So I hope that answers your question.
I would also say, if that's okay, the difference, so when you have it in the fridge, then it's readily available.
Yeah.
I mean, you might want to warm it up a little bit for your baby, but you don't necessarily have to do it. If it is in the freezer, the thing to keep in mind is that once defrosted, it will only last you about 12 hours.
Yeah.
And it's best kept then in the fridge rather than outside, or so keep it in the fridge once it's defrosted, and just decant a bit of what you need to do. So if you are planning to, if it's milk that you're expressing and you have had your baby already and you need to store it, initially probably the fridge.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to use it within the next 6 hours, the fridge would be the best option. And if you're coming to the end of the 5 days and you have over, you have more supply, more than you need, more than your baby needs, then you can freeze it.
Yeah. So Rita's come back saying, how do you store it? So their options are yours. Bottles, quite often. So we have the bottles that we have here. We've got one's over there, I think. So just bottles. But as one mum said to me yesterday, she'd been using bottles. They take up a lot of room in the freezer. Freezer bags are really good too, actually, because they flat pack. They might take up a lot less room. So, and actually, very often you can attach the freezer bag straight onto the pump, so you don't even have to have a bottle. So so that works very well for some mums. I was supporting a mum yesterday who's doing exactly that. She was pumping straight into a freezer bag, and she said so much better because that she lies them flat or upright, whatever, and when they're frozen that she can put them flat. So it works really well.
And if you're storing colostrum, then again, probably you've talked about your syringes and the little containers and little pots. There
are containers. We don't have very many of these, but these are colostrum containers. They've got actually a lovely rounded bottom, so you don't lose the colostrum. You can catch it, because colostrum's in such small amounts. We wouldn't put it in a bottle. We would totally lose it, and we wouldn't use a pump, because we mentioned pumps earlier. You would end up with the colostrum would all be in the pump kit. It would be stuck in this valve, and we would lose it, and it's so special that we can't lose a single tiny drop of it. So hopefully that's answered your question, Rita. So, but I don't know if we've got any others. So no more coming through. So we've covered expressing and stomach sizes. I mentioned we've talked about 4 reliable signs. Hello, we've got a visitor. Hello. You're on Facebook Live. I
just wanted to give you some
tea.
I think we were getting offered tea. We regularly get offered tea on these Facebook Lives. So anyway, I don't know if we've got anything else to say. So got no more questions. We've been on now for an hour or so. So it's frozen on here. So still got 23 people watching at the moment. Any more questions, ladies?
Yeah,
gents?
exactly. Any more questions? Or, I mean, we can talk about other things potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say as well, I mean, you have talked about stomach sizes and that the volumes need to increase and everything. So if they're not increasing, if feeding your baby, there are, a few occasions when feeding your baby seems to be a real struggle, whether it is at the breast or with the bottle, and it seems like they're very asleep and you're struggling to wake them up, and they're struggling to feed and they're falling asleep easy. And it feels like it's so hard, and get in touch, because sometimes it's not just a feeding issue. So I would say get in touch, because we can assess if it is a feeding issue or if there is something else going on with your baby. So if it does feel a real struggle and you feel that you're all the time trying to get your baby to feed, but it wouldn't take the milk that you're offering, it wouldn't take the breast, it would fall asleep all the time and not feed or sleep for very long periods of time. You've probably talked about the frequency. Often babies feed 8 to 12 times, sometimes more. So if your baby is sleeping for over 6-7 hours, but the rest of the day they're not feeding every hour a lot and very actively, if they're having very long periods of sleep, then get in touch, because it's not always just a feeding issue, and often you're already doing everything that you can do. There might be something else going on, so definitely seek help from your midwife or a health visitor or GP.
Yeah, and a normal baby is looking. Normal baby's looking for food 8 to 13 times in a 24-hour period. So if your baby's not doing that, then get some help. And the sooner you get it, the better, because not only will that hopefully negate big weight losses, and we do struggle with weight loss with babies, but also push your milk supply. And I've already mentioned you've got a really finite window to push your milk supply. Got a few more questions have come through. Elizabeth asked, can the colostrum stay in the syringe or go in the small container you showed? Actually, the syringe, if you've expressed it into a syringe, they come in a little paper wallet, which I haven't got here, and we just put them straight in the freezer. Date it though, put your date on it.
Or you can all put them in a little, food bag, seed bag or something like that with all the syringes.
We just suggest that they're dated so we know how old they are. Obviously, as I said, best place for it's the baby, so hopefully it'll get used quite quickly. Kimberly's come with a question. I think I've got a few more actually. Okay. Kimberly said her baby's now 3 weeks old and exclusively breastfed. She's got a very fast letdown, and I'm worried my baby's getting mostly formula because he usually only feeds for around 15 minutes at a time, but around every 2 hours. He's also putting on weight quickly. He gained 200 grams in the first 5 days. Woo! And another 300 grams by day 10. Should I be worried, or is there anything else I can do to help?
So I would say, if a baby's growing well and the poos are yellow, and so we don't usually worry too much about fore milk or hind milk.
No.
So it sounds like your baby's growing really well. If your baby was to only get the fore milk, one of the first signs would be that your baby's stools would turn green. So if that is the case, then get in touch. There are a few things that could do. Sometimes expressing a little bit, sort of hand expressing a little bit before touching your baby can help. If your baby's happy and you're, and all it is working really well, then I would say don't worry, you're doing a fabulous job.
Yeah.
If your baby's struggling and coughing and splattering, coming on and off, and struggling with the fast letdown, there are a few things. Sometimes, again, adjusting a little bit the latch as how your babies are touching at the breast might help with coping with the flow a bit better. Sometimes more reclined position or feeding in a more upright position might help. And as I mentioned already, if it's really fast and struggling, sometimes just a little bit of expressing before touching the baby might help to sort of slow down a little bit the letdown. But it sounds like you're doing brilliantly.
Brilliant job. So we don't ever, as Elisa just said, we don't worry about fore milk and high milk. If the baby's growing, we don't worry about it. And 15 minutes is a good amount of time to feed. Anywhere between 5 and 40 minutes would be considered to be a normal feed. So it sounds like your baby's doing a great job. Obviously, if there are, as Lisa said, if there's a few problems that she's highlighted, then let us know. But the weight gain looks lovely. Well done, you. Right, we've got a question from Emma. She said, will it be us that will provide feeding support to the new mummies before we get sent home after birth? Well, actually, our staff are all really well trained. They all know how to help positioning and attachment and teach mothers how to hand express. We tend to see the mothers who've got more complex problems. So if the staff working feel that you need a bit more help, then that's when we get involved. So in a way, you probably don't want to see us. We see the ones who've got a bit more to go happening there. You've asked, would this be readily available to us, or would we get this from our midwives once we're home? Both. So all the staff on the wards are trained, and they will help you. If they think that you need a bit more support, it might be one of us. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 5 of us. I mentioned all of us. When you get home, the community midwives are really really skilled at helping with feeding as well. And again, if it's slightly more complex, then they will involve us again. You can call us direct as well, and we will triage you, and we will say whether we feel we need to see you, or we'll signpost you to where you need to get help if we don't think we need to see you personally. But we will more than happily talk to you, triage you, and point you in the right direction. So.
Sometimes if you are particularly struggling and you're at home already, our birth centres, Chippy or Wallingford, they're good places to go where you could have a bit more help, sometimes stay there a few hours and get a bit of extra support with positioning and attachment. Also overnight. If you're really struggling in the middle of the night, that could be, phone them.
Phone Wallingford.
To warn them, ask, could I, pop by and get a little bit of extra support, and they will be very welcoming and happy to support you.
Yeah, and even if they can't actually have you in at the time, they'll talk to you.
Yeah.
So because it's 24-hour service at Wallingford, you can give them a call. They can help you. It's amazing what could be done over the telephone, what reassurance, and then put a plan in place to get you help. So we've got a few more questions coming in now. So Kirsten has said she's been having a few problems with the connection. She's going to watch us on the catch up. That's fine. But she had her first baby here on the 25th of June, and it was an amazing experience. We're all incredible. Thank you. We like hearing that. We come to work to do a good job, don't we, Elisa? We don't come here. We definitely do.
Oh,
So thank you very much for that comment. That's really lovely.
thank you.
Zoe has said, when do you start to produce colostrum and where do you get the syringes from? Only 23 weeks at the moment, so a way to go yet. Well, actually, you're going to have colostrum very soon. It doesn't-
I
yeah.
have it already.
Yeah,
16.
so in the sort of in the 20s, the colostrum starts to appear. Some women don't even notice. You probably notice your breasts are getting a bit bigger, a bit more tender. You'll notice veins in the breast. Some women don't leak at all, but others do, and they might notice it now, might notice it later. When colostrum leaks, it looks like dried sugar, doesn't it? It's
Yeah,
all
a bit
crystalline. So you might see
crystals.
the end of your nipple is a bit crystalline, or the inside of your bra, and that's all showing signs of colostrum. But some women never leak, so it's not an indication of whether you've got it or not, but you will be producing colostrum. Very, very few people don't produce milk. And the majority of people who struggle with milk production, unfortunately, it's to do with those early days and not really getting it going. There are a few conditions that cause women not to produce milk, but that's quite rare. The majority of women do produce milk.
And I would say if you were probably, I don't know if you've mentioned it earlier, if you were wondering about when to start expressing as well, so you would have colostrum from quite early on, but we would generally suggest to express, or when you get to 37 weeks, you could probably start maybe practicing just a little bit from 36, but to do it more consistently from 37 weeks. I mean, if hand expressing was a way to really induce labour, I think we wouldn't need,
No, we wouldn't need
all the
other things we
gels
do.
and oxytocin that we have.
Yeah.
But still, that said, if your baby's particularly ready, or if your body's particularly ready, or both, hand expressing might bring on a bit of Braxton's contractions, and for some might be in combination, and just it's not causal, but it might happen together. So for this reason, we just suggest to start around 37 weeks, unless you're expecting your baby to be born a bit prematurely, or and in that case, talk with your midwives and your health professionals to check when could be safer or a good time. It might be just the same morning, before the induction, if there is an induction labour, or sometimes during labour. Some mothers do, and we support some mothers to do it during labour.
And I know that in the elective section
section
bay, a lot of mums are encouraged to hand express there. And as I said earlier, it's really good to learn that skill before you've even had your baby. Practically all mothers are really tired after they've had their baby, and learning a skill when you're not so tired is really, really useful. That was Zoe. Hopefully we covered your question. Rita's asked, are there any breastfeeding groups for before birth to get ready to breastfeed, learn about it? Organisations to contact would be people like the Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Service. I always get it wrong. OBS. Look up OBS. Wonderful. Our colleagues, they're so fabulous, and they do online antenatal classes as well. So perhaps contact OBS, and the other people around are La Leche. They're really good as well. NCT are definitely running classes. These are all virtual, but they are running. So NCT do classes, so you could join those. So those are all places that you'll be able to get some support. So I don't know how many weeks you are, Rita. I can't remember. I think you maybe told us earlier. So
they're all definitely running some antenatal classes. So yeah. Look on their website for OBS. It's Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support.
That's it. I always get it wrong. I put service and then I get ticked off.
La Leche League Oxfordshire as well. I think we've just got an email from them saying they're doing one session quite soon, probably
25th.
Next week, the 25th. Next week.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll find some support there, Rita. And have a look. Emma's come back. She said, thank you, Emma. Kimberly said, thank you. His poo is still yellow, although he coughs, and sometimes when it's really fast flowing, and we're using Infocol to help with the wind, he seems to be managing okay. Sounds like you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Sounds we love hearing stories like that, don't we? So he's come back with a thank you, and so has Rita. So, I think there's no more at the moment. I think we might call it a day. Yeah. So we'll be here next week. I think it's me and Naomi next week. We're going to let Elisa off the hook. So, so it'll be two two other people, well, me and Naomi next week. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you found it useful. And we'll maybe see you next week. Those that we've spoken to and said please get in touch, do give us a ring, because I'm sure we can make things a bit better for you and improve what's happening. Whether that is an attend anywhere, or if we do need to, we will meet you face to face. But please get in touch, the two of you that were struggling, and let's make things a bit better for you. Those that have got a bit longer to go, there are some fantastic websites out there. Go and have a look at UNICEF Baby Friendly Initiative. It's got some lovely videos about meeting the baby for the first time, skin to skin, all these sort of things that will really make a big difference when you first have your baby. Oh, they're coming in now. Marta's come in. Do you know if there are antenatal classes not just for breastfeeding? We're having our first baby and feeling a bit lost. NCT is not just breastfeeding, that will be all of it. That will be so NCT would definitely meet your needs on that one. It is a paid for service, it always has been, but they would be able to help on that one. So if you look up NCT National, you'll be able to see the local branches. There's Oxford and Abingdon and different branches around, so they'll slot you into ideally the nearest branch to you, because it's very good from the point of view of making friends, but they'll also look at the dates when you're due. So NCT may be able to help you with that more than some of the others at the moment, which are more feeding based. Emma's come back and said thank you, that she's found the sessions very useful. So thank you to all of you who've put in your fabulous questions. Not a single one of them was silly, they were all brilliant, and we're very grateful for making sure we don't have to do all the talking, that you give us a question and we don't have to make it up as we go along. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Have a lovely week.
And you. Bye.